Hey ambitious aspirants, I am Advocate Tamanna and welcome to Anmol Mehta's Super 20 IAS. So guys, I am back with another video of our current affairs series अखबार का ज्ञान जो आएगा काम। इस वीडियो में जो कंपोनेंट मैं कवर कर रही हूँ वो है इकोनॉमिक्स। तो चलिए लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द क्वेश्चंस। Question number 1. Consider the following statements regarding monetary policy. The Reserve Bank of India (RBI) is vested with the responsibility of conducting monetary policy under the provisions of Agreement on Monetary Policy Framework Act. The primary objective of monetary policy is to maintain price stability and achieve growth. The inflation target is set by the Reserve Bank of India in consultation with the Government of India once in every 5 years. Which of the above statements are correct? Option A 1 and 2, option B 2 only, option C 1 and 3, and option D 2 and 3. The answer is option B 2 only. Monetary policy refers to the policy of central bank with regard to the use of monetary instruments under its control to achieve the goals specified in the Act. The Reserve Bank of India is vested with the responsibility of conducting monetary policy. This responsibility is explicitly mandated under the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. The primary objective of monetary policy is to maintain price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. Price stability is a necessary precondition to sustainable growth. In May 2016, the RBI Act was amended to provide a statutory basis for the implementation of the flexible inflation targeting framework. The amended RBI Act also provides for the inflation target to be set by the Government of India in consultation with the Reserve Bank once in every 5 years. Question number 2. With reference to Union Budget, which of the following are covered under capital receipts? Disinvestment, interest and dividend on government investment, funds from Public Provident Fund, revenue from income tax. Select the correct answer code. Option A 1 and 3, option B 2, 3 and 4, option C 1 and 4, and option D 1, 2, 3 and 4. The answer is option A 1 and 3. Government receipts which either create liabilities or reduce assets are called capital receipts. Thus, when government raises funds either by incurring a liability or by disposing of its assets, it is called a capital receipt. Two examples of capital receipts which create liability are borrowing and raising of funds from Public Provident Fund and small saving deposits. Two examples of capital receipts which reduce assets are disinvestment and recovery of loans. Disinvestment by government means selling a part or whole of its shares of public sector undertaking. So do you guys know the difference between capital receipts and revenue receipts? For the reference, check out the image. Let's move on to next question. Question number 3. Consider the following statements. External financing brings in foreign currency that is useful to bridge the balance of payments apart from its utility in the developmental expenditures. External financing cannot be used to bridge the fiscal deficit. Which of the above statements are correct? Option A 1 only, option B 2 only, option C both, and option D none. The answer is option A 1 only. If external aid or external financing is a grant or coming without interest, no better way to finance the deficit if we ignore their inflationary effects. When the domestic market has limited amount of funds and if the government desires to borrow a large share of it to finance the fiscal deficit, it tends to raise the demand for funds in the market. This shoots the market interest rate for the funds and causes problem to the domestic investors who have to pay a higher interest rate to avail the loan. If the same money is borrowed from abroad, the crowding out effect doesn't occur. Question number 4. Internal and extra budgetary resources sometimes seen in news is option A. Financing received from IFC Masala bonds. Option B. Resources raised by the PSU through loans and equity. Option C. Monetization of deficit through forex reserves. And option D, Basel III capitalization of commercial banks. The answer is option B. Extra budgetary resources are those financial liabilities that are raised by public sector undertakings for which repayment of entire principal and interest is done from government budget. Such borrowings are made by state-owned firms to fund government schemes but are not part of the official budget calculations. Extra budget borrowing is excluded from the fiscal deficit calculations but at the same time are added to the total debt of the government. Next question. Question number 5. Tax buoyancy refers to the responsiveness of the tax revenue growth to changes in GDP. If there is an output growth and the tax buoyancy is not commensurate, then it can imply option A, there is a tax evasion. Option B, growth in the non-tax part of the GDP. Option C, both A and B, and option D, none. The answer is option C, both. Tax buoyancy explains this relationship between the changes in government's tax revenue growth and the changes in the GDP. It refers to the responsiveness of tax revenue growth to changes in GDP. When a tax is buoyant, its revenue increases without increasing the tax rate. If the output grows and the tax buoyancy is not commensurate, it means one of the following: there is a tax evasion or growth in the non-taxed part of the GDP, for example, agriculture. Question number 6. Consider the following statements regarding capital adequacy ratio. Capital adequacy ratio is the ratio of bank's capital in relation to its risk-weighted assets and current liabilities. As per RBI's norms, Indian scheduled commercial banks are required to maintain the CAR percentage as stated in the Basel III banking report. Which of the above statements are correct? Option A 1, option B 2, option C both, and option D none. The answer is option A 1 only. The capital to risk weighted assets ratio, also known as the capital adequacy ratio, is the ratio of a bank's capital in relation to its risk-weighted assets and current liabilities. It is decided by central banks and bank regulators to prevent commercial banks from taking excess leverage and becoming insolvent in the process. The risk-weighted assets take into account credit risk, market risk, and operational risk. The Basel III norms stipulated a capital to risk-weighted assets of 8%. As per RBI guidelines, banks are required to maintain a minimum capital to risk-weighted assets of 9%. Question number 7. Consider the following statements regarding development finance institutions. Development finance institutions provide risk capital for economic development projects mainly on commercial basis. During the pre-liberalized era, India had DFIs that were primarily engaged in the development of the industry in the country. In India, the first DFI was operationalized before independence with the setting up of the Industrial Finance Corporation. Which of the above statements are correct? Option A 2 only, option B 1 and 3, option C 1 and 2, and option D 2 and 3. The answer is option A 2 only. The government's latest budget proposes to set up a development finance institution soon to fund the ambitious National Infrastructure Pipeline. A development finance institution, also known as a development bank, is a financial institution that provides risk capital for economic development projects on non-commercial basis. During the pre-liberalized era, India had DFIs which were primarily engaged in development of industry in the country. In India, the first DFI was operationalized in 1948 with the setting up of the Industrial Finance Corporation. Subsequently, the Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation of India was set up with the backing of the World Bank in 1955. The Industrial Development Bank of India (IDBI) came into existence in 1964 to promote long-term financing for infrastructure projects and industry. Question number 8. Which of the below statements best describe the term Goldilocks economy? An economy that is neither too hot nor too cold to create inflation or a recession, allowing for a market-friendly monetary policy. A market-friendly monetary policy is driving an economy that is overly hot with inflation, an economy that oscillates between hot and cold, in other words, one that cannot maintain reasonable economic development while also experiencing excessive inflation. An economy that is neither frigid enough for stimulus nor warm enough to sustain expansion. The answer is option A. A Goldilocks economy is an economy that is not too cold or hot, in other words, sustain moderate economic growth and that has low inflation, which allows a market-friendly monetary policy. A Goldilocks economy describes an economy that is not so hot that it causes inflation and not so cold that it causes a recession. The term describes an economy that is operating in an optimal state by providing full employment and economic stability. An anti-Goldilocks economy, however, is the one that's neither cold enough to support stimulus measures or not hot enough to sustain growth. Question number 9. Which of the following statement correctly defines the term gig worker? Workers outside the traditional employer-employee relationship. Labor working without appropriate remuneration. An employee with written contract of employment for a fixed period. Workers not covered by the social security schemes of the government. The answer is option A. The Code on Social Security 2020 has defined gig worker as a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of traditional employer-employee relationship. Traditional workers have a long-term employer-employee relationship in which the worker is paid by the hour or year, earning a wage or salary. Gig worker may include freelancing, temp agency work, self-employment, and subcontracted work. Question number 10. Which of the following statements are correct? The real interest rate refers to the interest rate before taking inflation into account. A nominal interest rate adjusts the observed market interest rate for the effects of inflation. Select the correct answer. Option A 1 only, option B 2 only, option C both, and option D none. The answer is option D, none of the above, as both the statements are incorrect with the definitions interchanged. The real interest rate adjusts the observed market interest rate for the effects of inflation. It is an interest rate that has been adjusted to remove the effects of inflation to reflect the real cost of funds to the borrower and the real yield to the lender or an investor. A nominal interest rate refers to the interest rate before taking inflation into account. The nominal interest rate is generally the one advertised by the institution backing the loan or investment. The real interest rate is equal to nominal interest rate minus the inflation that is expected or actual. So I hope you guys like the video. Give us a thumbs up if you like it, comment if you have any doubts, and share it with your friends. For more videos, turn on the bell icon and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Happy learning!